Dear Paul, you are again here. How does it come? Because I invited you. Welcome to my channel, my friends. Welcome to for a new chapter. And what do you have for us this week?
Hi, my friend Nick, you good looking Belgian devil, you. We're going to go through chapter 7 today of Doug's Mistaken Identity. We were obviously chapter 6 last time. And in chapter 6, Doug is really explaining how lots of people think there's something wrong with them and they think they need to be fixed. Now, in chapter 7, it's entitled Poison. And it's talking a lot about the things that we are told, which are, if you like, poisonous in regarding to the fact that they just increase our feeling of lack or of limitation. It's a bit like people saying, "Oh, money doesn't grow on trees," or "You'll never amount to much," and this starts to create these invisible fences. In fact, I think in this chapter. Um, uh, Doug mentions a book about a guy who was said it's a really good book to read, and you'll hear about it. But he was locked up in during the war, and of course, the only thing he had was his own mind and going to within. So this is obviously a time that he compares with that sort of feeling, and he through these difficult situation that you hear about in this chapter, he also starts to find that he has to take responsibility for things, not take responsibility that, I'm to blame or anything like that, but he no longer starts to act like a victim, and he no longer starts to say to himself, look, yeah, I know, I had this happen with my mum and I had this happen with my dad, and hey, look, they are what they are. It's not their fault. They had their own things that they grew up with. I've got to take responsibility for my own life. And he starts to do that by looking within. And I think certainly when I started working on, the mind and trying to understand more about it, this whole thing of looking within was difficult to understand, because I remember I used to think to myself, well, if you're looking within and the answers are all inside me, who do I ask to get the answer? Sure, they can't. I get questions. It's like counterintuitive. So, but he does. He realizes through his experiences that he needs to look within. And then there's one last thing that this chapter does cover in this sort of brief summary is it explains that we learn, we grow through suffering. Now, I remember when I first heard that and I thought, no, 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 I'm sorry. Are you telling me the only way we can learn is to suffer? Well, if you think about it, you probably learn your best lessons when you make a mistake. And generally, if you make a mistake, you're suffering in some way.
Mm.
And if you think of a lot of people who have been through immense challenges in their life, and yet they've come through. I mean, the Harry Potter lady who wrote all the wonderful books. Her story was she had a very, very difficult time. She hadn't got any money. She couldn't. She was really having challenges with her life, and that drove her, and that taught her many things. So it may take a while for people to really take on board that thought that you learn by suffering, but it's true. When things are going great, you're not really learning anything. So when we suffer, it's actually an opportunity for a lesson. And when people would say to me, suffering is an opportunity, oh, that's all that positive stuff, you're just being positive. I hate people being positive all the time. Look, if it's bad, it's bad. But
Mm.
if you really look into it for yourself and you study about it, you will start to see that suffering is an opportunity, because that's human beings, we grow through striving to overcome things.
Yeah.
It's like our oxygen.
I,
Now I've got used to that idea, but if you hear it the first time, it's a hard one to get over.
yeah, it's a hard one because if you live in a mediocre middle class family where everything is normal, okay, nothing is in extremis good and not in extremis bad. It's like you just waggle on the river.
Mm,
Then when someone says that and say, well, then I don't suffer enough. So I
mm,
first have to go to bedtime so that I can grow. And and that's of course that's a misunderstanding
mm,
because I think my belief is you better suffer from the challenges that you consciously choose
mm,
than from the challenges that are being put upon you. So if I
mm,
set a goal that I don't know how I will reach it, if it's possible to reach it, well, I believe that I can reach it, but how I will get there, and I take my first step, well, I will suffer because I don't know. I don't know.
mm,
But it at least it's the suffering that I create for myself.
mm,
And I
mm,
grow at that moment. I will learn. I have to learn tactics. I have to learn new skills. I have to learn about myself. But now
mm,
I'm learning because of my own suffering. I create for myself.
mm, mm. It's
Otherwise,
always,
otherwise you first, if you're like a mediocre like me, I'm coming from a family. Well, we had some things, yeah, but I never felt it like as that dramatic. So that will exclude me from any success. So I should first get into a car accident or whatever, or something very bad before I can become successful. That would be
mm.
not very
You've
fair.
I'm sure that you've had tough things. You've had to, not as perhaps as extreme as what Doug's gone through, and that's the same for me. My family was very much exactly what you said. But if you think about it, there are things that you've probably been through in your life which you've had to deal with that have been difficult.
Of course, but not of that degree that it would make me jump out of the kettle. Like
Yeah, but
it's
this
it's
is.
it's not it's not that bad. It's not bad enough. It's what I in physio or in fitness
Mhm,
is what I say. You need to go deep to grow. If you just train on your habitual level,
mhm,
your body won't recognize any fitness or any challenge to become stronger. It
mm,
will stay the same.
mm,
So you will have to go deep. You have to push your heartbeat up. You have to lift harder weights. And if you
mm,
just take like 1% more than you used to do, nothing will happen. You won't get any stronger.
mm. Well, this is also, when we talk about you learn from suffering, it's it doesn't have to be extreme. It's simply you're suffering. Say you had a colleague who was a sports person and their goal was to be in the national team or something like that, and they injure themselves in such a way that they cannot carry on with their sports career.
Mhm.
Now, that's definitely suffering. And when they first experience that, that's probably no way they're going to say to themselves, "Oh, well, this is a lesson I can learn from." You're thinking, "Oh my God, my life is over. I can't
Mhm.
achieve my dream." But the strange thing is that life, the universe has a way of taking us sometimes to our goals via a different route. And just because sometimes things go wrong or we suffer in some way, it's no different than if we've told the sat nav in our mind where we want to get to in our lives, and we, during the planning side or doing the action, somewhere we get get stuck in a road traffic, or we go down the wrong road and we're in a cul-de-sac and we're in a dead end and we're like, oh no, I've gone the wrong way. That's still a form of suffering, but we've learned from it.
Yeah.
And you just say to yourself, yeah, okay, I'm just gone down the wrong road, and we just turn around and off we go. But it's the same principle. It's no different, even if it's something small or if it's something really, really bad. See, Doug would say, because he's told me this when I've questioned him about it, and I'd say, well, look, I've been through some things, but it wasn't anywhere near as bad as you. And he'd say, Paul, don't ever do that. I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, don't ever diminish the things that you've gone through and compare them with what I've gone through. The difference is that was something that in your life you've had to deal with, and they were lessons. And don't compare the two. They both have the same thing.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
learn that this is where you could just take a course correction, and that these things are challenges, are lessons. So that's
Yeah.
the key. Not always easy to do, but if you understand more about the mind, you'll understand that it is an opportunity. And this is what he's going to talk about, what he was starting to go through and understand some of these things in this chapter. So shall I get into it, Nick?
Yeah. Start reading.
Okay, here we go. Chapter 7, Poison. Ask no questions and you'll be told no lies. Charles Dickens from Great Expectations. You may not have been poisoned. Oh, you may have been poisoned.
Yeah.
Eat your vegetables. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. If you don't brush your teeth, they'll fall out. Actually, I think that's true. Remember those urgings. What are some of the things your parents fed you? There's all sorts of things I can remember that my parents used to tell me, by the way, that they just did it because they wanted me to do a certain thing. Anyway, I'm sure you can think of things. I think of some of the things I had to swallow, literally. My mum would make me drink Butley's cough syrup. Their tagline was, "It tastes lousy, but it but it works." And it did taste lousy, but it didn't work. There are a lot of things the adults made you swallow which tasted awful and didn't work. I'm not talking about food or medicine. I'm talking about all the things that weren't true that they jammed down your throat. It was the same things their parents fed them, and they had passed it along to you. All the poison that was fed to me caused the dis-ease in me. It was long before I started feeling unwell and started thinking something's wrong with me. I remember when I was struggling through my sexual abuse, the men in the ring of pedophiles convinced me that their abuse was love. To convince me their abuse was normal, they would show me excerpts from a book that explained that experiencing sex with another male was normal. The book didn't say it was normal for a 13-year-old boy to be exploring sex with his 15-year-old friend or with a 26-year-old man. I remember this first time. The first man to reel my friend and me was a manager of a Radio Shack store. We would skip school and hang out at his store. Excuse me. He invited us to a party at his house one night, and when we arrived, there was no party. We were greeted by his wife, who was going out for the evening, and we were left alone with this man. He convinced my friend to go upstairs to his room. As I sat quietly on my own, I knew what was going on upstairs. When it was over, we both walked home without saying a word, knowing what we did was wrong, but too ashamed to speak of it. It was a strange and confusing time for me because it felt good physically, but emotionally, I was left with a feeling of guilt and shame. Talk about poison. I felt so bad about myself and the secrets I was carrying. It started to show up in my physical body. I suffered from skin problems and gastric ulcers. Sometimes I could barely walk. The pain was too much to bear, and I would lie down on the ground in the fetal position until the pain subsided. You don't have to look at what happened to you as a bad thing. I decided I was going to start over, and I was going to change my mind. I decided it wasn't anyone's fault, not my adoptive parents, not my birth mums, or not my abusers, nor anyone else's. I took responsibility for my life. I put my stake in the ground and formed a new credo to live by. Amongst all the poison, there was also beauty. I didn't see it at the time, but the beauty of life kept me going and kept me alive. Peacocks can feed on poisonous plants, and they have the ability to convert the poison to helpful compounds that enhance their feather colors and their beauty. Human beings have a unique ability to transform negative things into wisdom and thrive. But it's up to us to make that choice. One of the most inspiring examples of this human capacity is Viktor Frankl, author of the book Man's Search for Meaning. He survived imprisonment in a Nazi concentration camp. I encourage you to read this book. When I started to see my abuse as a gift, I was lighter. That was a turning point. I eliminated all the poisonous people in my life. I fired my friends. I went into myself to get to know me and what I had learned and taken over the years. I found a new Kool-Aid to drink, and it tastes good. Some stories are more severe than others, but the outcome is much the same. We're left with this bad taste in our mouth and gut-wrenching feelings inside. You can get rid of this poison. There is an antidote. You don't have to believe everything you were told. You can reject some things you were fed. You can choose what you want to believe. No more poison, only wisdom. And in the meditation here, it says a good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. Okay, so there's a place there in the book where you can write your insights, and it says in the action points, aren't you sick and tired of being sick and tired? I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. What poison did you swallow? What's something that happened to you that makes you sick? How can you look at it differently? What's the wisdom or the gift in it? If you look at things differently, you can see yourself differently. Just because some things made you feel sick doesn't mean you need to stay sick. Your suffering comes from your perception of what happened to you. So it's a tough one, that particular chapter, but it's all about whatever it is that you feel you've gone through, and what most people do who aren't consciously aware, I think, is they become into a person who acts like a victim. And because they're not aware of it, they stay a victim. But what Doug did was he started to learn, just as Viktor Frankl did. You know, someone could say, well, you know, what the heck am I going to learn from being in a Nazi camp for all those years? Well, if you read the book, you'll find Viktor learned a lot of things. And this is what Doug did through his experience.
Yeah, it is a certain point. It's a conscious choice to search and to reap and to harvest the good, or the, in whatever circumstance it is. You can always decide that there is something good. How ridiculous that seems, but it is like that. You can choose what you think. So I think, yeah, Doug did that well. And then if we read it, it's like, oh, horrible childhood, but he came out as a stronger man.
Mm. And I think perhaps most people, um, certainly for myself, I haven't been through anything like this.
Mm.
But there are things that have happened to me in my life that I think probably I've taught my wife about it, but no one else. And there are those things that you carry, that I think it's important that if you can understand that this is some sort of lesson. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, well,
Um,
what you said in the before you start reading, that whatever degree of suffering that you have, it is still suffering, and resistance suffering, how do you like to call it, um, and harvesting the good, or yeah, getting the good out of it, is a conscious choice. You don't do that by accident. You have to look
mm,
for it. And is it missing your bus or being abused? Well, both can create suffering or resistance,
mm,
and it's the habit that you create in those situations that will make that you can grow or not, or that you can learn from it or not.
mm. And in this instance, it took Doug to a place where he started to really find a passion for mindset, and also to want to help people who want to make more of their lives, or are struggling with their mind, or feeling limitation, or all these different things. And he, I think, puts a lot of what he's learnt and the drive behind it and his passion behind it because of the experiences that he went through.
Of course. Yeah, no,
Um,
that's clear that he's now using that experience, um, to teach or to mentor others. But it has to be clear. You don't have to go through it. It's sometimes I see people who are. I'm thinking now of a guy on my social, and he's he's working for a multi-level marketing company, and is promoting that food supplements. It does a good job. He's always present, and now lately I see him promoting that he has
AHD, yeah, uh,
ADHD.
attention deficit disorder.
Yeah, so that's now his unique selling point.
Mm,
And he starts to talk about it, and I say, well, yeah, that's good, but you don't need to have a disorder to do that marketing business. So you don't need to suffer as much as Doug to understand that there is a lot to learn. You don't have to. I think that the wisest thing that you said is that suffering is suffering, and it doesn't have to be a big suffering.
mm,
To You always can learn from suffering.
mm. I have a friend who was, I mean, it's kind of similar in a way because she was abused by her father. But when she was old enough, she went into the Royal Air Force, and well, I can't remember the name of it now. She's like a wing commander or something like that. She's very high up. It's like equivalent to like a colonel in the
Mm.
army, and incredibly sort of dedicated, very fit lady. She's got a little boy and a little girl now, and she's married to a chap who's in the army. And now their two children will probably never ever go through the things that she did.
Mm.
But there will still be things where I'm sure she will teach them that when they hit challenges, that is an opportunity,
Yeah.
and they will strive in as they grow up, literally, um, in everything they do, because she will teach them that lesson. That will be the programming that those children will have around them. I know that.
Mm.
And of course, then they'll never go through that. But I think they will hopefully not become unconscious competence, where they're doing it and they don't even realize that they're doing it, so they don't have consciousness. They will also gain consciousness as well. And so then people go on to, they go on to other things, but things can always happen. And this is the wonderful thing about the universe and life, that and for me also recently, there's challenges that I'm dealing with, and every time now I look at it and I think, what is the universe teaching me here? There is an incredible lesson, and there's an incredible opportunity. And there is a part of me that says, are you out of your mind? This is just bad. This is just like really not a good thing to deal with. You're nuts. You're just trying to kid yourself. And I think, no, I know through knowledge and studying these things that this is an opportunity. But how
Yeah,
many people would think of it that way?
only 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
It's not much more than that. And that's true. Then and that's a muscle, I think, a habit, a mental muscle that you create. It's not you're not born with that, because from our biology standpoint, we are more in defense. We are always searching for can we escape, or can we avoid pain, instead of embracing pain and learn from it.
Mm, mm.
So
I mean, there's things that I know you're working on all the time, and there's things that because when I listen to you, there's lots of things you can do, like practically in your sleep, that you're really good at. Some particular areas of business that I love listening to you when you were talking about it. But there would have been a time that you wouldn't have been so practiced, and it's hard to go back and remember when perhaps you were struggling to understand it, because now you just do
yeah,
it without, it's like, and that's the important thing to not forget when we start trying to do something new, perhaps.
yeah, embrace that resistance, embrace that suffering of learning something, of stretching yourself. If you set a goal, if you go for out of your comfort zone, know that struggle will come, and embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, because that's the opportunity.
yeah. And in the end, what I said in the beginning, it should well, it should be that you search for your own struggles, because that means that getting you're getting in towards your goal, and you will meet those struggles.
Yeah, yeah.
If
As long
you
as, yeah,
if you
sorry.
get the struggles, well, the struggles that you didn't choose yourself, then maybe you can think, but maybe am I on my right path, because now things are coming to me that I didn't ask for. But if things I'm meeting now as a struggle or a resistance are in line with my goal, then that means I'm on my good. I'm on my path. I'm on my way. It's because that's normal. If I want to expand my business, there will be struggles.
Mm, mm. As long as you've got as you say, a decent goal, and you're certainly someone who goes for good goals, because you're a driver. You'll always go at something that's going to push you. You're that kind of person. Then you won't have to worry about any challenges, because they'll crop up.
Yeah, they come up, but there were times that I was like, I didn't understand that, so I was cursing those challenges.
Mm,
Like, why can't that go easy? Why? Because you're growing. That's why it's not easy. Why
mm.
did this have to happen? Yeah, because you're growing, because you're on the right. That's now my mantra is: if something happening, I say, well, that's because you're growing.
That's right. You're on the right track. It
Yeah,
doesn't feel like that, but that's
it
what's
doesn't
happening.
feel like that. But no, shit. No, and then now I have to deal with this. Now I have to deal with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's you choose for that. It was your choice. Don't blame it.
It's a conscious thing that you learn about how the universe works.
Mm.
It just is.
Great,
Right.
great making. Thank you, Paul.
You're very welcome, my friend. It's always good to see you.
I'm jumping off because every day at 7:30 I I took myself a new challenge to come live again on my channel with an insight of the day. So
Brilliant.
rich thoughts to feed your mind. That's a team. And today I'll talk about choice.
Sounds good.
Okay, Paul, see you next week.
All right. Thanks a lot,
Enjoy
Nick.
the rest of your day. Bye.
You too. Bye.